started. Um, Thank you very much for coming. This is the Modern and Medieval Languages Teachers and Advisors Q&A session from St John's College. My name's Elsie and I work in the admissions office at the college, and I'm joined by Carmen and Georgina this evening. I'm very grateful for their time. So I will hand straight over to them and we will have a Q&A portion shortly after they set out some introductory information. So if you've got any questions now, pop them in the Q&A box and we'll come to them shortly. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for coming, especially any of you who are on half term right now. We're always really happy to talk to teachers, and so we really appreciate your time. As Elsie said, I'm Georgina Evans, so I'm one of the directors of studies in modern and medieval languages at St John's, and I'm based in French, but I look after especially the first year students, regardless of what languages they're studying. And then my colleague here, Dr. Carmen Olmedia Herrero, is specialist in Spanish, but she presently looks after our year abroad students and our fourth year students, regardless of what language they're studying. So we both get to know all of them, and one of our colleagues also looks after the second years. So even though we are associated with different languages, we treat modern and medieval languages as one subject in lots of ways, and as a community. Also what I would say is, like, my specialism in terms of kind of teaching and research is that I'm in film studies, but also in 20th and 21st century literature. So I'll often teach papers, students who are pursuing those kinds of options, and Carmen teaches Spanish language. And so we've got kind of like different viewpoints on the course. So I'm definitely asking Carmen to chip in anytime she has things to add to what I'm saying. I've got a very few slides, and this is because I don't really want to spend this time kind of like replicating stuff that is very well set out already online. But I was just going to run through the basics of the structure of the course, and then hopefully the focus will be on anything that we can use a conversation to bring out. So I'm going to just play from the start. So yeah, modern and medieval languages at Cambridge and St John's. I'm going to talk about the course, which is the same regardless of what college you're at in its structure, and in our faculty teaching. But of course, when you're applying to Cambridge, you're applying to a college, and a lot of your teaching will be organised by that college and through that college. And so I'm kind of talking with both those perspectives in mind today, with this lovely photograph that I took on my way into my office one morning.
We can't see your slide. Sorry to interrupt, Georgina. We can't see the beautiful picture.
That's a mistake, isn't it? Right, I was looking at it myself.
No worries.
Here we go. There we go. Apologies, everybody, for that. It is the end of the day. Right, okay, this beautiful picture I took one morning as I walked to my office, feeling very lucky, and also walking past lots of student rooms. I think lots of students took a similar picture that day. So moving on, I just wanted to kind of briefly kind of run through the structure of the course. So this is for the degree in modern and medieval languages, which we call MML for brevity. So if you're applying to Cambridge to study modern and medieval languages, you'll be studying 2 out of this list of languages: French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. And one of these languages you need to have studied at school up to A-level or equivalent, and the other one you can study from scratch. And the only one that you can't study from scratch or ab initio at the moment is French. So there are multiple combinations available, obviously, within that. You can't study 2 languages from scratch. You can study 2 post A-level or equivalent, absolutely. And I just wanted to also flag up some things which are perhaps less kind of commonly known, and that your students might like to think about. You can combine one of these languages with classical Latin, if you're taking Latin at A-level or equivalent, or with classical Greek, which can be studied post A-level or equivalent, or from scratch. And I think the same rules apply, that you need to, you can't do 2 things ab initio. If you've got students exploring those options, then absolutely they are very welcome to write and ask us questions about it. We also have a degree in history and modern languages where you can combine one of these MML languages with history in a 50-50 ratio. So you'd be applying for history and modern languages. But I think what should be known is that the MML, the ML half of history and modern languages, would be exactly the same as if you were combining that language with another one. So students of history and modern languages will be in the same classes and groups as, a student of French and history is in the same classes and groups as a student of French and ab initio German. So they are very much kind of melded as cohorts. One more option that I also wanted to flag up is that it's possible to apply for the degree in Asian and Middle Eastern Studies. So that would be your home faculty, but to combine Arabic, Hebrew, or Persian with one of the MML languages. And sometimes that's something that people haven't heard about or thought about. So it's definitely something to keep in the mix if you're interested in studying languages. So I just wanted to talk kind of about like what components are in the degree, because obviously language degrees vary quite a bit in different universities, different kinds of courses, and different students will have different ambitions for what they want to do with their languages and through their languages. So we definitely encourage people to look at the specifics of what our course means in some detail, and also to look beyond the first year as well, ideally, when they're doing their research. So broadly, we can sort of consider two categories that are present in every year of the degree. And so the first of these is language work, which is, of course, really important. Students study grammar, they do oral work, translation in both directions, longer forms of academic writing, and also languages through the media, where they're not just listening, but also now kind of making videos and things like this. So alongside the language work, sorry, I should say those elements of language work, if you're studying a language ab initio, then of course in your first year, you're doing them at a level that's appropriate, but the kind of the broad disciplines and skills that we're developing will be the same. So alongside their language work, students also take papers that we call scheduled papers. And those papers are the kind of non-language work papers, and they will be covering material which is associated with the languages. So that would include literature, film, art, thought, some linguistics papers, or some of them are shared with the linguistics tripos and available to students doing MML, and historical and political topics. So these will often be organised according to period. You might be studying 20th and 21st century French literature. We do have some comparative studies papers where you can look at like a topic. So for example, a paper that I teach is on European film, and that allows you to kind of connect across your languages. We've got some papers where you can start another language, like as a self-contained thing. So that goes for Catalan, Polish, for example. Any you want to add to that list, Carmen? I mean, these are just samples. I'm saying the things which I know the best.
Yes, apart from the languages that you can study in the tripos as your course, in your second year, you can also take Catalan or Portuguese if you're not studying it as part of your course or one of your two main languages of the course. And then in your fourth year, you can also take Polish and modern Greek. And there's the possibility of maybe Ukrainian being added to this list, but at the moment I think it's just Polish and modern Greek as an introduction to the language, which is good. Plus, also we have the language center in the university, which is very popular among students, and you can learn virtually any language outside your curriculum, but it's also something that if you're a language lover, you probably want to know.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. So the third year of the degree is the year abroad, which is a compulsory element, and students have a lot of freedom in Cambridge, and we give them support in making their choices. So they can, at this point, they can choose if they want to start focusing on only one of their languages, they can do that, or they can keep up both of them. So they can spend the year in one place, or they can spend it in two. And that can include splitting it into two different places to study the same language. So we might have a student who goes to university in Spain for the first half of the year and then travels to Latin America for the second half. They can work or study or do some combination of both of those things. And so these can be quite individual choices in what's going to suit the individual. And some of them use that year as well, to work on their languages, but also to kind of move in directions which speak to their future career aspirations, which can be really great as well. And while they're away, they write a dissertation or they do a kind of long translation project, which is supervised remotely from Cambridge. So they have a contact, of course, they have a contact with us in terms of support, but they've also got this ongoing piece of academic work, which fits into that year. And that does form part of their final assessment. And so that's partly one of the things which facilitates the freedom in what they do, because they all are doing the same kind of project for assessment purposes, which comes from us. So in the final year, that's when students have the most chance to specialise. When they come back, they do an oral in whichever one of their languages they choose to focus on for their oral. Again, they can keep up just one language, or they can maintain both of them, or maybe they want to focus above all in one language, but still maybe write a dissertation on the literature of the other one. And it's always interesting to see actually with students who've done ab initio languages, because sometimes they completely fall in love with their ab initio language and specialize entirely in that. And sometimes that's turned out to be something that they're glad they did, but they leave it behind. And we see many, all shades on that spectrum. And then they also have this chance to focus much more on the things which interest them in their scheduled papers, so all the kind of cultural things. So I still think I haven't ever seen two students do exactly the same thing in their final year, which is great. And when we have our final year dinner, I always say, kind of very sentimentally, sort of how we've watched you become yourselves. Because in the first year, they have a much more kind of prescribed route where we get everybody to try a bit of everything, because students don't come to us already thinking, I want to specialise in medieval French. In the main, there's always one or two, but it's through the journey of going on the degree that you find that out about yourself. So by the end of the year, by the end of the fourth year, they have quite different profiles often. And that also really feeds into, where they go on next, because they go on to all kinds of different master's courses. Some of them I write references for all kinds of things. Including, people who've gone to do art-based or kind of museum-based things, or law, or international development, or stuff like this, all kinds of things. So yeah, they emerge as a really interesting group of people who we're always glad to have known, sure. Applying. So I wanted to keep this kind of fairly minimal, because I think it's really, really important that people every year, applicants go and look for the current year's information on the web pages for the faculty, which are always kept up to date, and also for the college that they're applying to, because we do get variations year on year in how we organise things, because we want to make them better and also respond to changes in the climate and the subject in different ways. So please always do that. We're always so happy to answer questions, really happy, because often we can, straighten out misconceptions and things that way. And we always want to reassure applicants so that they're not feeling like they're kind of operating in the dark and on their own. So it's never going to count against you or for you if you write to us and ask something. It's part of what we expect to do. And if you write to our admissions office, to Elsie and her colleagues, if it's a question they can't answer, they'll pass it to us, and we are always happy to help. One thing I wanted to say, because we get this question often at open days, you don't have to go to a college which has staff or fellows in your chosen languages, because it's the nature of the course that we all have to make arrangements with our colleagues and other colleges. And that's one of the lovely things about it, that students will always end up, because they're picking things which are maybe quite specialist, especially by the end, they're always going to end up in supervision pairs for small group teaching. With students from other colleges. They might already know them from their faculty language classes. That's another way that all the students are mixed up, because they all have the same lectures and grammar and translation classes in the faculty. So they do get to know each other across colleges, which is especially great because, you know, you might have maybe 2 students doing German in your own college, but you'll meet the rest of the cohort there. So anyway, the point being, we all know each other, we all work as a collective. So if, for example, we've got fellows, we've got Carmen, who's in Spanish, we've got Dr. Antonello in Italian, we've got Professor Lisboa in Portuguese, we've got our German lectorin and a French lecteur, but we have a director of studies for Russian still, who is someone who's not based in St. John's, but who always looks after our Russianists. So it's not the case that it's not possible to do something. We'll always make sure that we have arrangements that are exactly what you need. But you know, when you're choosing your college, you might want to think about kind of like questions around community and things like that. And so I certainly like having such a variety of language specialisms within the college. And I think in the student body, I was just thinking about our current first year, where we have 8 students, and I think there's only 2 of them who are doing exactly the same combination. But at the start of the year, when I was welcoming them all in freshers, partly for my own purposes, I drew this kind of massive Venn diagram with like a circle for each language, and I put all their names in the relevant intersections, just so that they could see really that they all had different things in common with one other person. And yeah, that hopefully that means that we don't expect to all know exactly the same things as each other, and the same goes for students and staff. So it's a conversation that is sort of always ongoing, where students might connect in their teaching with things that they've learned in their other language and so on. So Elsie, I'm going to hand to you to say some more stuff about applying, because in the admissions office, you're always the people who are most on top of that.
Thank you so much, Georgina. Yes, just to add what you've said, really, to stress how important it is to check the web page, the course page, the main university course page that Georgina has linked there in her slides. And in the follow-up email that I'll send around after this session, I will link those course pages as well. But yeah, just 2 things that in the admissions office we sort of manage in terms of the applicants in the admissions cycle each year. If there is a written work submission, and there has been in previous years for MML, but for each year that you're advising your students, I would say make sure that you are encouraging them to check their website for the latest requirements. But the written work samples are typically 2 pieces of classwork essays. We tend to look for one being in English and the other being in one of the languages that they wish to study at university. And there's a cover sheet that you would submit as an applicant with that as well. So we will always know the context, essentially, within which, was this a timed essay? Is it a portion of some EPQ or some longer piece of work? So there's that, and other courses also have similar requirements for written work, of course. That would be submitted by applicants, usually through a separate form in early November, so after the early UCAS deadline, which is in mid-October. And then the other thing that we've had in recent years is an invigilated over Zoom admissions assessment for MML. So this will change year by year, but typically that's going to be assessing similar things that we're assessing through less interactive elements. So personal statement we get as a written document, but this and the interview, for instance, these are more interactive, I guess. So the assessment for MML would typically be in late November. So this would be for candidates that had been shortlisted for interview. As I say, it's in previous years been invigilated over Zoom. There are lots of specimen papers to example papers for these and other what we call Cambridge College registered assessments for our candidates on the web pages. So all of this is freely accessible information, updated each year. So do encourage your students to have a look and practice what they will have to be assessed on in times conditions, but do also reassure them that everything they're doing in terms of their language study will be, really, it's not this separate thing, this sort of strange separate thing that we're asking them to do. It's asking them to show us those core language skills, so translation and comprehension, these sorts of things. Yes, and also when I link the course page, I just wanted to mention that that Carmen and Georgina and our other directors of studies for MML have put a really thorough overview of the ways that MML interviews run at St John's. So do have a read of that and encourage your students to look at that as well. Thanks.
So I had my one more slide. I'll play it because it's got this great picture on it, which is can you see that? Whoops. Can you see that, Elsie?
Not yet. If you press the green share screen again, we should be able to see it after you've pressed that.
Here we go. Yeah. The reason I wanted to show you this one was because actually this was from a little outing I did recently with some students and some colleagues where we went to the St John's Old Library and we got out. We asked not me personally, we got the specialist librarians got out these beautiful manuscripts in French, and I really enjoyed looking at those with the students, even though that's not my field of expertise. So yeah, we just wanted to finish by saying, please talk to us. So absolutely questions, really happy to answer questions, but also in a session with teachers, we're really always happy to hear things that you want us to know. Hopefully your students will become our students, and obviously in languages at the moment, we've got some things which are quite challenging going on, and we would really always be very happy to connect to teachers as a community that we have a lot of common ground with and also want to hear from. So that's everything I had to say now. I think, Carmen, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you've said everything, and I think we're probably running out of time, so it's probably better that we answer the questions. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Please do put your questions in the Q&A box or the chat. I can have both up, so I'll be monitoring both. It was such a thorough overview. Thank you. What I tend to advise applicants to do for this sort of super curricular, wider exploration of subjects is to look at the suggestions document that we've got online. But I was wondering if there were any particular resources, if I could ask the first question, if there are any particular resources that you would direct prospective applicants to for MML.
Got an idea. So I can start on this. I think what we always want to see is students' account of their own journey on that front, really, and that can be very different for different people. So if we, when we we know there's only so much that can be in a personal statement, but of course we also talk to them in their interviews, and so we like to know how they join the dots. So yeah, absolutely, my teacher recommended this film to me or book. That's obviously a great place to start, but one person might say, well, then I really like that director, or I've decided I wanted to see more films about that city or something like that. But then other people will come to their interests in very different ways. So it might be through other things that they've encountered. So I think we really don't particularly want to point people all in the same direction or to particular kinds of resources, because one of the things that is really great about the subject, I guess, is that people come from very different kind of interest backgrounds, Carmen, and that's not meant to be vague. It's just that I really feel like that's always the strongest, one of the best things about our successful applicants is that they've got their own story to tell about how they made their way from one thing to another. But they don't have to be things which are considered to be I'm trying to think of the right word. They don't necessarily all have to be of a kind of like very high cultural nature. Always happy to hear about someone, you know, they watched a series on Netflix and then they went and found some other thing, or it's just finding, like, sort of being able to talk about their energy of how you pursue your interests independently, because of course that's one of the things that helps people do well at university. Carmen, sorry, did you want to add anything?
No, yeah, I think I totally agree, and it turns out normally to be much more stimulating and useful in the interview if they are genuine and they have chosen their own path, because that tends to be something that is more heartfelt to them, and it tends to be a lot easier for them to manage as well. So, and as Georgina said, it doesn't need to be something really impressive or academic. It can be anything which just sparks their interest. And they will be able to say more about that than something that has been, maybe they have been led towards, but they're not really very keen or very enthusiastic about. So yeah, don't be afraid to explore your own route.
Thank you both. Yeah, really nice to hear that organic route through areas of interest is what you're looking for, with that natural curiosity and enthusiasm. I realized that the first question that we had coming into the chat was actually my question, so that's great. And then the second question that I've just seen in the chat is about something separate from MML. So I'll just briefly say that students that would be eligible for free school meals but haven't applied, their parent carer hasn't applied for it. If you get in touch with us, we can talk through that particular situation. That would only affect matters in terms of the evidence that we would need to make our financial support assessments for applicants. So it wouldn't be an advantage or a disadvantage to their application. It would actually be something that is impacted about in terms of the pastoral and financial support that the college and then also the university through our different schemes provide. So it's more of a technical document evidence submitting question. So if you get in touch with us, either to the email that sent you the link to this Zoom, or just the main admissions email that I'll give at the end, then I can discuss that with you a little bit more detail. So the next question that I've seen come in has been about the weighting in a personal statement between the two languages, but also for history and modern languages. Should it be 50-50? Could we get your response to that? Thanks.
We're quite used to seeing personal statements from students who might be applying for slightly different courses elsewhere. So that's something that obviously only individuals can judge, like how they want to play that. I guess the advantage we have is that we will at interview have the chance to talk to people. I think if you're applying for an ab initio language, then we would always like to see something about your interest in that. But you do have the supplementary box, don't you? So if maybe your Cambridge application is slightly different to what you might be applying for elsewhere, then you can use that as well. But I don't think we would ever have a rigid rule. Even if you were only applying to Cambridge, and we know you're not, we wouldn't have a rigid rule about 50-50, because we have so many other elements going into our kind of assessment of a student.
Thank you. Yes, I'll just pop in the chat the link to that additional, that supplementary questionnaire. It's called the My Cambridge application. And there is, as Georgina says, that little box, that optional Cambridge specific personal statement. We've had another question. Just while I do that, I'll read out the next question that's come through. This is about the year abroad. So how do directors of studies assist with organising the year abroad? Can the year abroad be at a university, or is it work-based? So I think you touched on this earlier, but perhaps if you want to go into a little bit more detail about the year abroad.
Carmen, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As in the college, as director of studies, we mostly advise students, and they come to us when they're hesitant, they don't know what to do, and we try to guide them in terms of the academic aspect of their choice, and that's it varies a lot what they want to do in their year abroad. Some of them want to study, some of them want to work. We normally guide them and ask them to think about what interests them, and also what will be interesting them later on and in their fourth year at university, and sometimes further in their careers. So that's from the college point of view. We do give this academic advice, and when they're hesitant, some of them have a very clear idea of what they want to do, and some of them don't. So that's that varies from student to student. But then there is a year abroad office in the faculty, which gives them a lot of support as well in terms of finding placements and finding a place at a university if they want to study abroad. So they basically can choose whatever they want to do. So they can do volunteering, they can do an internship paid, they can do an unpaid internship, they can study, they actually have a lot of freedom, and they can use the resources from the Year Abroad Office, where they have a database with links with firms and placements that have been going on for years, and links to universities where we have agreements with. But they also can do their own thing, and many of them actually do, and they just end up working in the most varied and interesting things sometimes. And so there's quite a lot of freedom. There is support in terms of advice, and also in terms of finding a placement. But it's basically down to them to choose what they want to do. And yeah, they have to fill in a risk assessment. So we need to know that they're going to a safe place. And so there are some places which are out of the question at the moment. But yeah, other than that, there's a lot of freedom.
Yeah, they have compulsory meetings in the faculty, I think, from the start of second year, don't they?
Yes.
Centrally, and they get given a handbook. And so the university exchange places are all ones which are established. And then, as Carmen says, yeah, the jobs, often they're jobs which have been done by a Cambridge student every year, so they can talk to students who did the same job before. And if they do want to kind of go off and find their own job and have that approved as an activity, they can do that. But nobody's in a position, you know, if they're going to do that, that's because they decided that's what they want to do.
Thank you, that was really helpful. We've had another question that is relating to the assessment that I mentioned earlier about the one that was invigilated on Zoom for this last cohort of applicants, because those assessments will be testing translation and you know, analysis skills. It's I think really beyond using the past papers, specimen papers that are provided on the dedicated web pages for those sorts of assessments. Just carrying on with, you know, passages that stretch them, I guess, slightly beyond the confines of what's perhaps in their syllabus for their A-level or whatever their current qualification is. I'm not sure if you had anything to add on that. How to support students to prepare for this kind of translation task.
Well, the written assessment is this. So it's not translation, actually. It's,
sorry.
Yeah, you have to summarize. You have to respond to the passage in the foreign language, and then there's a section in English. So we don't want people really to be feeling like the whole rationale behind the assessment, really, which I know it's difficult to achieve, but the rationale is that they shouldn't have to do extra stuff beyond what they'll be doing in their A-level languages or equivalent. So the written, the part where they're writing in the language is hopefully the same kind of like productive language skills and summarizing that they're already doing. And then the part in English, we're not looking for a tick list of particular kinds of vocabulary or anything like that. It's a deliberately open-ended question, and people write good answers in quite different styles. And it's deliberately designed to accommodate that. because people are coming from very different school subject backgrounds. So there are lots of different ways to do that well, I think. Carmen, do you have any?
No, I think that's just reinforce what you just said about we're not looking for big words or lots of theoretical knowledge about rhetoric devices. It's just their ability to see them, whether they can name them or not, is that we're looking for. And the one advice is that I know this is an assessment that they have to do in a certain amount of time, and sometimes they have to rush. But in the summary part in the foreign language, they tend to make many unnecessary mistakes, which are likely to be just rushing, and I mean unnecessary mistakes such as agreement and things that they should make sure that they proofread their essay before they submit it. And so, but other than that, I don't think they need to prepare anything extra other than what they normally do at school. Yeah.
Thank you both for clarifying that. Apologies for my mistake in describing what they would be assessed on. That's really useful. I think it goes. You can say the same for other assessments. It's the timed condition part of it that is the real challenge. And so practicing writing these sort of discursive responses in timed conditions, and crucially, as you say, Carmen, proofreading and making sure that they're prepared to do that, would be the best piece of advice. Thank you. I'm just checking if we've got any further questions in the Q&A box. I don't think so. We've got a broad question about what advice would you give for a competitive application. Perhaps if I could just say a little bit of sort of what the application entails, in the sense that it is that holistic assessment of each individual and all of the different elements that they're submitting. So the teacher's reference, the personal statement, the other information, the personal educational circumstances, that info that we get through the UCAS application. But then, as Georgina's mentioned, there's that additional Cambridge specific supplementary questionnaire that we ask them to fill in. So that comes all together along with any other requirements that we ask them. So performance in any assessments, any tests, and the written work samples as well, if those are submitted for the course. So all of these different elements, and then of course the interview, because chronologically the interview and the first 3 weeks of December, it seems to be sort of the final hurdle. But I think, and please do correct me, Carmen and Georgina, but I think it's a misconception, isn't it, to think of the interview as sort of the final make or break element of the application process. It really is that sort of holistic assessment. I was wondering if you wanted to reflect on that, and any particular advice you might have for a competitive application.
I would just reflect what I said before about the supercurricular question, that really be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else, or someone else that you know who was successful, because they might have had quite a different kind of path in and through the course. And so follow your interests, all the kind of usual things really about, obviously, like, we want to see you your love for and work on your subject, and to hear about how you have pursued that. But a competitive application can look, one competitive application can look very different to another one that's equally good. So that I don't mean it to sound vague, but it's the same thing about really telling your own story and having your own path. If you're applying for an ab initio language, have a think about why and what you're hoping to do through that, and where it's spoken, etc. And have a look at the course, I suppose, like, know what course you're applying to, and have a think about the whole shape of it, and the different elements that I ran through before, which are, of course, not just language, because a language degree is not just language learning, because there are other ways to do that. So I guess being aware of that.
We've had, unless you wanted to add something, Carmen, we've had a...
Well, maybe just for the personal statement, which seems to be quite a major concern for applicants, maybe just to say that I think that is a much better personal statement, one which is heartfelt, and that the student has made his own personal statement. We're not, they will have the opportunity to go to talk about other things that they didn't say in the personal statement. So they shouldn't feel the need to impress with many words or much information, but they should make it theirs, what they're saying, and they should just have a view on it and be very happy with what they've written, because it's it comes from within rather than wanting to impress anyone. They will have opportunities to talk about other things that they haven't written in the personal statement, and sometimes that's it's misguided to just want to impress too much. So just be yourself, as Georgina said. So that's it.
Thank you, Carmen. Yeah, absolutely. Some nice, lovely, more broad message as well, to be yourself and follow your own interests. We've had another question. This is quite particular and I'm not sure, so I was wondering if I could pass it over to you both, and if we can't give a full and complete answer, then I will look into it, so you can always send me an email, the person who's asked this one. So if there's a student who is looking to apply for our AIMS course, our Asian and Middle Eastern Studies course, in particular Chinese, but also for other UCAS applications, for other UCAS choices, would be looking to study perhaps joint honours, I think, Chinese with other European languages. How is that assessed in the AIMS department? How would the AIMS department assess that? Would they, if they thought that maybe the AIMS course wasn't right, would they sort of pass that application to the related faculty and the related people in modern medieval languages department? I'm not sure if there's ever been a situation like that which you could reflect on.
I don't recall anything like that. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I don't think it's normal practice. Correct me if I'm wrong, Georgina, but I don't think it's normal practice to pass an application from one faculty to a different faculty. That I don't think would happen. What sometimes happens is if you apply to a combined tripos, and then maybe history and modern languages, and one of the parts don't think you're a fit for the course, then they might make you an offer in just history or just the modern language. But I've never heard of a faculty passing a UCAS candidate to another faculty.
Yeah, I'm really not, I don't know what the mechanism would be or what, yeah. I mean, I'm guessing in her personal statement that interest is going to be obvious, but I don't think we have a structure that would allow that, as far as I know. But if you want to follow up by email, then I'm sure we can ask other people who might have come across similar, but I don't think there would be any, it wouldn't be an obvious thing for us to do, no.
No, thank you both. That was my thoughts as well. And it's an interesting situation. So do send us an email if you would like further clarification. And indeed, the applicant can also get in touch with us in St John's or one of the other colleges as well, and we could pass that on. I can't see any further questions that have come in. I will wait a moment or two more in case anyone is typing a question. But while I'm just waiting, I will put the admissions office email in the chat for everyone to make a note of if they wish to follow up with any questions. And as Georgina and Carmen said earlier, I can direct any questions that are vastly beyond my knowledge to them both. So yeah, please do send them initially to me, and I can pass on as needed. And thank you both very much for such a thorough and really useful overview of the course and the application process. It's been a really useful session, so thank you both very, very much. And thank you everyone for coming this evening. Really appreciate your questions.
Yep, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks, Elsie, for organising us all.
Yes.
Very welcome. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.